Okay, so we are on 102B.14. Share my screen with you. Okay, so this is hair theory. This is how we learn about how your hair grows. Okay, this might make some sense why certain people's hair grow a certain way after we learn about how the hair is formed. Whether your hair is straight or curly, wavy, thick, thin, all that. Anyone ever had a bad hair day? All the time. I have them all the time. Okay, so if you show knowledge of hair and scalp, you need to be smart, right? So you need to know this stuff. So when a client asks you a question, you will have an answer and you're not just like, I don't know. So one time my client asked me a question, I said, well, you want the easy version or the long version? So, I just made it so that they could understand it, but there was a whole complicated thing behind it. Is your hair alive? How fast does your hair grow? Does it respond to stimulation? Okay. Anyone know that? Is your hair alive?
No. Well, once it comes out of the scalp, no.
Right. Well, so when it's in the scalp, yes, but once it grows out, no. How fast does it grow? It depends on the person, really. My hair doesn't grow fast at all. There's an average growth, but then there are people who, exceed that average. And then there's people who are underachievers on the hair growth department. And so that would be me. My hair never grows long. I've always wanted my hair to grow long. For some reason, I've always wanted to be able to sit on my hair or, have it be really long, but it's never grown that long. This is probably the longest my hair ever grows ever. So there we go. So does it respond to stimulation? Your hair doesn't, but your scalp does, right? So these are all questions that can be answered once you've learned about trichology, the study of hair. So that's the study of hair. Trichology, or it's like I always say trichology, but some people say trichology, but I always say trichology. So there you go. The hair itself is not alive, but the cells of the hair and the hair bulb are alive. Okay, so what's the main purpose of your hair? Well, adornment, because it does make the top of your head look better. And then protection from heat, cold, or injury. Right? That's our hair's purpose, protection, basically, and adornment. All right, so to understand more about the hair, you need to know how the hair bulb is formed. So the hair bulb is formed at the base of the hair follicle. So the hair follicle forms a cluster of cells in the upper layer of the skin, technically referred to as the basal layer or the epidermis. So this primitive hair germ, this forms in the basal layer of the epidermis. The primitive hair germ works its way down into the dermal layer of the skin to get nourishment. So this pulls the upper layer down with it, creating a root sheath, and the hair grows from the root sheath. So there's your little diagram there of how the hair actually starts out, works its way down. You get your root sheath in there, and then your hair actually grows. This whole thing here is the hair follicle. This down here is the dermal papilla. This is where all the blood vessels and nutrients go into your hair. And this right here is your oil gland. So the hair root, let's go back to this. The primitive hair germ works its way down the cell. The cells cluster and pull the upper layers down with it, creating the follicle or a tube-like pocket called the root sheath. So the follicle, the root sheath, kind of like the same thing. This is what the hair grows out of. The hair root is the portion of the hair that is inside the hair follicle under the hair surface. Okay. At the base of the hair follicle is a large structure called the papilla, which supplies nourishment to the hair bowl. And this is what's down here on the bottom. This is the papilla. This is where, like I said, all the blood and nutrients go to actually form your hair. So as long as your hair is inside the follicle, what part is inside the hair follicle is the part that's alive, or the root sheath. That's the part that's alive. Now, the shape of this hair follicle determines whether or not your hair is going to be straight, wavy, or curly. Okay, so the root sheath itself, or the hair follicle, is going to determine the shape of it. So if it's round, you have straight hair. If it's sort of ovalish, you have curly hair. At 10, or I can do it when I'm done with Sid. Or if it's tightly curled, your hair follicle is called elliptical. Now, you're never going to actually see this unless you have some type of a magnifying thing that's about, I don't know, a gazillion times magnified to actually see what this looks like coming out of the scalp. You're never going to actually see that. But you just have to know that that's what you have. These are things that are going to be on a test, so you do have to know it. You have to know that a round follicle is going to give you straight hair. A wavy to curly hair follicle will be oval, and a tightly curled hair will be what they call elliptical. Now, can these change over time? Sure. People can be born with straight hair, and as they get older, it gets wavy or curlier. That happens, or the vice versa. You can be born with curly hair, and it straightens out over time. So, as we grow, these can grow and change over time also. My hair used to be super stick straight. Now I can get a little bit of wave out of it. Okay. So there is a test question on there that says the two primary parts of the hair are, and then they give you all these different parts of it. But oh yeah, please. Parts of your hair. Okay, they're not talking about the follicle or the sheath or anything. They're talking about the actual hair fiber, your piece of hair. So you have a hair root, which is inside the hair surface, and you have a hair strand, and that's what comes out of the surface. That's what you comb, your hair strand. So now we talk about this hair growth. All right, so the papilla, which is down at the bottom of your root sheath or your hair follicle, it's filled with capillaries. Capillaries are small blood vessels that go to areas where veins and arteries don't go. These capillaries give you nourishment. They send blood to it, which give you nourishment to the cells around it. Those cells are called the germinal matrix cells. Okay, those are the cells that form the papilla. So these germinal matrix cells, they go their cell division, mitosis. They produce cells that form layers of the hair. So once this hair, so the germinal matrix cells produce the cells that ultimately keratinize, right? So keratinize is gets harder. So our hair is made out of the protein called keratin. And as it keratinizes, which just means it gets harder, it forms the three major layers of the hair. If your hair is pulled out from the roots, it will grow back again unless the papilla is destroyed. Okay, so just remember that when your hair gets pulled out, it grows back unless you destroy the papilla, which is at the bottom of those germinal matrix cells, because that's where it starts. Once that is destroyed, it will not grow back. Laser will destroy it. When people get laser hair removal or people get electrolysis, that will destroy it. If you get an injury that affects the dermal papilla, like when you get a scar, a lot of times scarring, you won't get hair growing in a scar because it's affected the dermal papilla. So that's the only way your hair will not grow back, is if that is affected.
So is there any way to fix it or not?
Once it's dead, no. Yeah. I mean, you might be able to transplant some hair in that area, because like a lot of times when men go bald, like it just stops the nourishment there and the hair kind of dies out. So sometimes if you're doing like a surgical procedure, a medical procedure, or sometimes some of the shampoos and treatments that they have for balding might stimulate that a little bit to get some hair growth out of it. But sometimes once it's gone, it's gone. You know, if you have a scar or something there, it might be harder to do a surgical procedure over because it's already scarred. So there's nothing there. There's like, it's like a plant, right? If the soil's no good, the plant won't grow. So, you know, if our soil's bad on our heads, you know, it may not grow. But who knows, maybe in 5 years, they're going to have some miraculous cure for baldness. Who knows? Okay. So our hair has these 3 layers. We have the medulla, which is the center or the core of the hair strand. Now, it's also called the pit or the marrow, but if you have like super, super fine hair, you might not have a medulla. So if you see an adult who has hair like a baby, like a super baby fine hair that's real fine, real flyaway, won't hold a curl very well, chances are that adult does not have a medulla. Okay, so those are some of the areas of the head there. Then you have your cortex layer. Your cortex layer is the live area of your head. This is the second layer. This has the protein structures. This is where the hair color comes from. The color of your hair comes from that. The elasticity comes from there. All of the bonds, all of the layers, like everything that has to do with making up your hair pretty much is in your cortex layer. Okay, any of the live stuff, that's in your cortex layer. Then we have our cuticle layer. This is the outer shell. Okay, the cuticle layer is the covering of the hair strand. It's made up of overlapping layers of like scales. They're transparent. They don't have any color in it. The color comes from the cortex. Okay, so this cuticle layer is the one that kind of looks like fish scales in the commercials. So that's going to affect the porosity of your hair, is your cuticle layer. So as we go back to the hair though, in the follicle attached to it is your sebaceous gland, which is your oil gland. That produces oil, of course. And so what happens is the oil, the sac that's containing the oil gets full, it empties out onto the hair. That hair then travels out to the surface of your skin. And this is what mixes with the body's perspiration and like dead skin cells and forms what's known as an acid mantle. This acid mantle is important because it protects the cuticle and the other outer coverings of the hair strand and maintains the pH of the hair. So it is important, you know, not to have your hair scalp too dry. A lot of people think that they have an over oily scalp. Do you really, or is it just producing the way it's supposed to? And because you don't feel it squeaky clean, you think you have oily scalp. I hear people all the time that tell me, I have to wash my hair every day or else it gets oily. But I dare them, don't wash it and let me see it. So like they'll come to school the next day and I'm just like, your scalp does not look oily, but it feels it to them because they can go like this and they don't have like that lightness of just freshly shampooed hair. So again, you think that your hair is like super oily. There's only a couple people that I've seen that really have a lot of oil on their scalp. But then here's the thing, you're stripping all that natural oil out of your skin, out of your scalp. So now your oil glands are saying, oh, I don't have any oil anymore it's gone. I need to make more. So because you're like drying it out more, sometimes those oil glands think that they have to produce more because it's gone. So they like overproduce themselves. So, you know, it's a real fine line sometimes between that. Same thing goes for dryness, right? People think they have dry scalp all the time, so they keep washing it. Well, you could be making it worse if you're not using the right type of shampoo for your scalp. scalp condition and hair condition are two very important things to having, good hair. So, and good scalp. So we want to make sure that we're taking care of our scalp as well as we're taking care of our hair. So that has to do with, how the hair forms, how the hair grows. You get dry scalp, chances are you may have dry hair. You have oily scalp, chances are you might have, normal hair. But we need to find that fine line and find out which products work best for ourselves. So see, these sebaceous glands are oil glands filled with capillaries that supply nourishment to the cells. The oil mixes the perspiration from the acid mantle. The acid mantle protects the cuticle and maintains the pH balance of the hair and skin. Erector pili muscles. Okay, so these are in the dermal layer. They're little muscles. They're the ones that give us goosebumps. And what that does is it causes the hair to stand on end. So this is what makes your hair stand up, right? You get chills, you get goosebumps, you get shivers. Your erector pili muscles have contracted. And that's what happens. That's what they're called. So at the other end of the erector pili muscles attached to the dermis are in the lower layer just beneath the epidermis. So we're just remember that the erector pili gives you goosebumps. I always thought that was a funny word. So that's one of the first muscles I ever remembered. I don't know why. So this is a word you'll need to know, keratinization, right? As the cells begin their journey upward from the follicle, they're separated into specific types. Some cells will become cuticle scales, others will make up the cortex, and then some will have the medulla. Okay, so they all form 3 different cells. This journey that begins deep in the skin, then grew through the outer layers, now becomes the visible hair strand. So the result of that is known as keratinization, right? This is the process of the cells changing shape, drying out, and forming keratin protein to become our hair. Once keratinized cells that form the hair strand are no longer alive. So starts as keratin, it goes through the process of keratinization, and then it becomes keratinized, which is a big thing to try to remember, but that's the protein is keratin. Right, so here we go. Now, this little thing that I thought was kind of interesting that was in our book talks about the foods that you eat that can affect hair. So here's a fun little fact here. If you eat salmon or salmon, or however you want to say it, salmon, it's supposed to make your hair shiny. Greek yogurt, because it has a lot of protein. Spinach will help you with brittle hair. Guava prevents breakage. Iron fortified food prevents hair loss. Lean poultry adds for thickness. Sweet potatoes are to fight dull looking hair. Cinnamon for blood circulation. Eggs for growth, and oysters for fullness. That came from WebMD. So they're saying that those foods will help your hair. Now, I don't know how much you have to eat, but that's what they're saying will help your hair if you have damaged stuff. So this is how your hair grows. Like we said, our hair is made up primarily of protein, which is made from linking together of amino acids, right? Amino acids are the building blocks of protein. These proteins have, ends that come together. They coil together. They make these coils of amino acids. These things coil together, they get bigger and bigger, and then you have your protophyll, your macrophyll, your microphyll, your cortex, and your cuticle, and there you go. You get your hair from there. So this is looking from they have it turned upside down like this, but it's actually looking at hair from a cut cross view like that. So we have our protein. This is the linking together of amino acids. The cortex of the hair is made of chains that take the shape of a helix or a coil. These chains coil around each other and become protofibrils. protofibril. Okay, so they coil around, they coil around, they coil around. You get your protofibril. Then they just keep twisting and they keep adding and they twist around each other and they become your microfibrils. The microfibrils follow the same process. They just keep twisting and spiraling, and then they become known as macrofibril. And this process is complete. It just keeps going and going till it forms the cortex of the hair. Then the cortex is then covered with the cuticle scales, which also contain protein. This twisting gives the hair the ability to stretch and spring without breaking. And that's basically how your hair is, it's made. So it starts with the cells, starts with the amino acids. They twist, twist, twist. As they're doing that, that keratin is forming. It's becoming your cuticle. It's becoming your cortex. It's becoming your medulla. And it just keeps on going and going. And then there you go. You have hair. It's quite a process. If you think about this, all the stuff that your body does, it is quite amazing, the stuff that happens, and we don't even like think twice about it. It just happens. We just know like, oh, my hair is going to grow back. But it is quite interesting. So as our hair grows, we have stages of hair growth, right? We have 3 stages known as atogen, catagen, and telogen. Think of ACT, atogen, catagen, telogen, right? ACT. Anagen is the active growing stage, which the hair bulb itself has the attached root sheath. So it's all in one piece. Okay. On an average, 90% of the hair is in this stage, which can last for 2 to 6 years. Long waist length hair is the result of long anagen stages. Hair color is darker when it's in the anagen stage. It's when it's actively growing. Okay, this is called anagen. Then it hits to the catagen stage. The catagen stage is a brief transitional stage when all cell division stops. So it stops growing. So now it's just like hanging out in your head. This lasts maybe 2 to 3 weeks, where it's just kind of like hanging out there. Then our hair goes into the telogen stage. The telogen stage is a brief resting stage where there's no root sheath attached in our head. This lasts about 100 days. Once this is done with about that 100 days in that telogen stage, then the hair falls out. Once the hair is gone, it's resting for that 100 days, and then it will start over again in the anagen or the active stage. So on an average, about 10 to 15% of all hair is in the resting stage. That lasts about 3 to 4 months while it's gone and it's resting.
So it grows by itself, or you have to do something like to make them grow again?
No, it'll just start growing all over again. You know how like you lose hair every day? So when your hair comes out naturally, it's a natural hair loss. This is the telogen stage when your hair's falling out. So not all your hair on your head is in that area. So each one of these stages, like maybe you might have, a certain amount of your hair in the anagen stage, a certain amount of your hair in the catagen stage, and a certain amount of your hair is in the telogen stage, all at one time. Like it's not all in anagen and it's not all in catagen. It's like rotating so that, you still have hair all the time. So, in normal hair loss, every single day, losing some hairs, that's totally normal. That's the hair that's in the telogen stage at that point in time. So will start to grow back all over again. On an average weight, we lose about, 100 hairs a day, I believe. They say we lose about 100 hairs a day. Sometimes you might think that you lose more, depending on how your hair is or what stage your hair is in. And sometimes you might think you lose less, depending on what stage your hair is in. Or it could just be the same all year round. I kind of noticed that sometimes people say, oh, I'm losing a lot of hair. It always seems to be like in the fall or in the spring. And so it kind of goes along with your animals. When your animals seem to shed more, like if you have a dog or a cat that sheds a lot, It just kind of seems like it follows along in stages like that. But it's a growth cycle. It's a growth pattern, because each hair follicle is growing, at a different stage. So anything that could alter your body, like illness, lack of vitamins, sometimes just age, any of these things can affect your hair growth, disease, medications. There are certain medications that people take that make their hair grow really fast. And then there's certain medications that kind of seem to add to hair loss. Just like there's medications that make people lose weight. And then there's certain medications that people take that can make them, gain weight. But anything that alters the state of the body can affect the hair follicle and the hair growth. I've seen people that have lost a lot of weight, especially, and sometimes people that have like weight loss surgery, their hair kind of like falls out for a while. I know a couple people that happened to. And it's just, their body goes through a shock. So it comes out in your hair. Everything kind of like comes out in your hair. So if a person is ill or taking medications, chemical services could actually, make their hair even worse. So this is some of the things that, can affect hair growth. In humans, an average rate of hair growth is 1/2 inch per month. Some people grow more, some people grow back. Contrary to an old myth, the hair does not grow after death. What happens is whatever's in the hair follicle itself, once death occurs, there's no more blood circulating through there. So any nails that may be down in the matrix, any hair that's underneath will be pushed out. Okay. Hair never grows on the palms of the hands, the soles of the feet, the lips, or the eyelids. Okay. Eyebrows and eyelashes are replaced every 4 to 5 months. Barbara is the typical name for a beard. Eyelashes are technically called cilia. Supercilia is the technical name for eyebrows. And capillae is the technical term for the hair on your head. Okay, so those are some other little things. So these 3 things right here can affect your hair: heredity, environment, products, or appliances. Okay, so heredity, yeah, I mean, that's, pretty much determined at birth. That has to come from your ancestors, or the genes that you inherit from your parents. Okay, these things make up the hair, like color, shape, diameter. Whatever genes come from whatever ancestor that you have can affect different people in your family. So for instance, you could have, a sibling that has a totally different hair color than you, right? And that's just the genes that they get. You could have a three boys in the family and one of them goes bald and the other 2 have hair, the same mother and father. It's just the genes that they've, gotten from their ancestors there. So why it comes out different in certain people of the same family, who knows? It's just the ones that come through, I guess, at that time. So we have environment, or we have weather, right? Moisture in the air. You go to the beach, what's your hair like? You go to the desert, what's your hair like? This will affect it. Rainy, humid, absorbs the moisture from the air. Some of this moisture will alter the hydrogen bonds, which gives your hair shape. Depending on the type of hair, it can become limp or it can become frizzy. It can become big or it can just like be hanging down. Wind could dry out your hair. Sun can damage your hair, right? Wet or dry weather conditions can cause a need for products that will either take the excess moisture out or put the moisture back in. I know when I'm in humid weather, my hair is really nice. It feels nice. I'm hot, but my hair feels nice. So some products, some appliances, right? Excessive heat from a blow dryer or a flat iron, some chemical services, hair colors, perms, even some styling products could dry your hair out, or it could affect the structure of your hair. So understanding the differences in people's hair makes you take a closer look at what you're doing and how these will, oh, where'd she go? Okay, so they'll affect your hair. So to understand the differences in the hair, we're going to take a look at, what does it say, these structural images of fine, medium, and coarse hair. These are magnified hundreds of times, right, to show the difference in the diameter of the hair. So if we were to each pull out one hair strand and compare them in the diameter and the circle, the roundness of our hair, we'll be able to tell. If we look at the fine hair, they have their cuticle layer, cortex layer, not so much medulla. We get to medium hair, here's our different layers, and then we get to coarse hair, and it's like all cortex layer basically. So this just gives us an idea between this. Sometimes races can have something to do with the type of hair, because that's all, heredity. But keep in mind that the diameter and the amount of pigment vary within certain races in your hair also. So I know, like on our doll heads, a lot of the hair that comes on the doll heads and a lot of hair that's used for extensions comes from India and Asia, because hair is really strong in those countries, can withstand a lot of chemical services. Where my hair, I could do another chemical service, I probably wouldn't have any hair. So, it really does make a difference. Here's some of the differences that they're showing here. So the diameter of the hair strand does make a difference, and if your hair is coarse or fine, your cuticle is supposed to be the hard and resistant outside layer of the hair, where the cortex is soft and elastic, which is where everything takes place, which means it's going to be larger in coarse hair than it is in fine hair. So the higher the cuticle cortex ratio, the more resistant the hair is. The lower the cuticle cortex ratio, the easier the hair can be molded. So kind of, this isn't true with everyone, but kind of as a general rule, more coarse hair is going to be more resistant than more fine hair. Doesn't work that way with everybody, but that's kind of like a starting point there. And then we have natural coloring in our hair. So melanin is what gives our hair color. Melanocytes are the cells which contain the pigment melanin. Okay, so how the color process works. Okay, so how the color process works. Melanin is produced by the melanocytes, which are the cells, right? These cells exist among the dividing cells within the hair bulb. Okay, melanocytes rest near the bulb's nourishment center in the dermal papilla and form bundles of pigment proteins called melanosomes. Genes in the human body determine the amount and type of melanin produced by the melanocytes. So in simple terms, melanocytes produce melanosomes, which contain the pigment melanin. That's a lot of melanin stuff behind it, but yeah, you have to know that. Melanocytes produce melanosomes, which contain melanin. Okay, so what does that mean? That means what your heredity gives you is what you're going to have. Now, there's two types of melanin in the body that create a variety of all the colors that we have in hair and skin, actually. So we have two types of melanin. We have eumelanin and we have pheomelanin. Okay, so eumelanin is a brownish black color. Looks kind of purple in that slide to me. And pheomelanin is a red-yellow color. Okay, so melanin influences the resting hair colors by the amount and size and the distribution of one or both. So depending on how those two colors are mixed, that's what color you're going to get in your hair. Albinism is a total lack of pigment. So there's no melanin whatsoever produced by someone who has albinism. The person with this congenital condition is called albino. And it is a congenital condition because it happens from birth. So the melanin in the skin and hair is like a protection from the sun's rays. So, you know, if you tan, that's your body's way of protecting yourself from the sunlight. More melanin is created to send to the surface to protect sensitive cells, resulting in more color, which is known as a suntan. Although skin color is passed through the genes, races that originated color, or no, sorry. Although the skin color is passed through the genes, races that originated closer to the equator developed a higher content of melanin in their skin to better protect against the sun. The same is true for hair. For example, white hair, which lacks melanin, is at the greatest risk for sun damage and can turn yellow from too much exposure. Therefore, you should recommend products with sunscreen and encourage your clients to wear hats when they participate, spending long extended periods of time in the sun. So yeah, we want to make sure that we are in the sun. So gray hair, right? Gray hair has no melanin, or it's reduced melanin in the cortex. It's referred to as mottled hair. Okay. Grows from the papilla with gray color, results from natural aging. Sometimes you can be caused by illnesses, hereditary, emotional conditions, but you can't wake up gray overnight. That's a myth. Some people say, oh, I went to bed and I woke up with all gray hair. Nope, not true. Okay, so the melanin in our skin, tan. Okay, let's see. True or false? Hair grows out of a tube-like pocket called a root sheath.
True.
The shape of the follicle will determine the length of the hair.
False.
False. What will the shape of the follicle determine? Anyone know what it will determine?
The texture.
Well, kind of. I mean, it's going to determine whether it's straight or curly. Okay. The portion of the hair that extends above the skin's surface is known as what?
The hair shaft.
Like your hair, like your hair fiber or your hair, yeah. The outer covering of the hair strand is called, you got that one, Nick? You know what the outer covering of the hair strand is called? No, Julian, you got that one? Julian, are you with us?
Yeah.
Do you know what the outer covering of the hair strand is called?
Wait, say that again.
Outer covering of the hair strand is called what?
Outer covering of the hair strand?
Uh-huh.
I didn't hear that part.
Okay, that's the cuticle.
Oh, yeah.
And the layer of hair that gives the most of its pigment and strength is called what? What's the second layer?
The cortex.
Yes. And Julian, I'm going to need you to stay on after everybody gets off for a second.
Okay.
Okay, so the central core of the hair strand, do we know what that one's called? That's called the medulla. Okay. So the process where cells change their shape, dry out, and form keratin is known as,
Keratinization.
yes. The 3 stages of hair growth are anagen, catagen, and
Intelligent.
remember the word ACT, A-C-T, anagen, catagen, telogen.
Imagine.
Telogen, yes. The active growing period of the hair is known as what stage? Active.
Active is energy, right?
And the amount of pheomelanin is very concentrated near the cuticle layer. The hair will appear more
Red.
okay. Okay. True, false, hair strand, cuticle, cortex. Come back. Medulla, keratinization, telogen, red. Okay. That's why when you bleach hair, it always looks so orange and stuff because it's pulling all that out to the surface. All right, let me get this next one up, which is hair care, which is 15. It's going. It's going. So this is all about hair care, like how to evaluate hair, what are some of the common hair conditions and some of the common scalp conditions, and then hair loss. So before you even pick up a comb, shears, you'll need to evaluate your client's hair. Okay, some vary slightly, some are very dramatic in differences. But you'll need to analyze the hair before you even start anything. It's almost there. Yay. Okay. So we're going to look at this stuff. This is kind of important to know too, because we need to know how to work with all different types of hair. So the first thing we're going to look at in our hair evaluation is we're going to have to know the client's type of hair. Is it coarse? Is it medium? Is it fine? Texture, the word texture refers to the coarseness or the fineness, the degree of coarseness or fineness of someone's hair. So if you kind of get used to the feel of stuff, you know, what does hair feel like? Now you can have a large diameter of someone's hair and it can still feel soft. Okay, you can have large diameter and it can feel coarse. You can have a small diameter and it can feel coarse. So we really need to know what their hair feels like. Okay, and it's gonna help us with this. So coarse hair, feel of wool may require stronger products, a longer processing time if you're doing a chemical service. Medium hair will have the feel of cotton. And if you're doing chemicals, it's probably going to work pretty normal. And then fine hair kind of feels like silk. It's easy to process, but it can damage just as easy. So as we're doing our examinations of the hair, this is going to give us clues about the condition of the client's hair and let us know like what products might work best. Something about styling products. A lot of them you will see will have numbers on the back of them. And so it'll say like shine factor versus hold factor. If you're looking at the back of the products and you see that the hold factor numbers are 1 to 5, they're talking about medium hair. Okay. If you put that, if it has a number 5 hold factor and you're putting it on someone that has fine hair, you could be using a product that's really strong for their hair. And the reverse could be, if you're using a very strong hold on someone who has really coarse hair, it still might not hold very well. So that's just a guide to go by when you're looking with products. So we've done our visual. Is it coarse? Is it medium? Is it fine? Now, how many follicles do they have per square inch of their head? This is known as density. Okay. So do we see a lot of scalp? Do we see about normal scalp versus hair, or do we don't see hardly any scalp? We just see a lot of hair. That's going to let us know how dense their hair is. So it comes in light or thin, medium, heavy or thick, or a lot of density. So we've looked at the texture. We've looked at the density. Now we're looking at the whole porosity and elasticity. Okay, so the porosity is the hair's ability to absorb moisture or liquids. Okay. Elasticity is the hair's condition to stretch and return back to its normal length. Those are conditions, okay? So if someone has average porosity, that means that cuticle layer, that scale layer, is slightly raised so the products can penetrate into the hair like they're supposed to. If it is resistant, the cuticle is flat, which means that those products may not penetrate into the hair as easily. If it's extreme, that means that that cuticle is raised or open or sometimes even missing. So that means that it's going to suck up those products like a sponge. And if it's uneven, that means that they're mixed. So you'll need to know what all these differences are for life, for test and all of that. So the elasticity, like we said, is the hair's ability to stretch and return. If it's normal, it should stretch about 20% when dry. When wet, it should stretch 40 to 50%. If it stretches like a rubber band, not good. So if you want to test for strength, you get a piece of hair. You hold it between your thumb and finger. You want to curl it like a ribbon. If it curls up really tight, it's good. And if it doesn't, it's weak. And that's your structural strength. Now you could have, depending on the length of the hair, you could have it where some areas really curl and others do not. Okay, but then you want to pull it for about 10 seconds and you want to release. If it returns to the curly pattern, it's good. If it returns to 50% or less, it's weak. A lot of people don't classify their hair as being strong or weak. They check with the elasticity, the density, the fine, medium, coarse, but then is it strong or is it weak for the structure of the hair? Okay. Again, we want to consider climate. Where are we living? Where are we at? What type of year is, or what type of, what time of the year is it when it comes to this? Both dry regions and both humid regions have their own concerns for hair. We live in more of a dry area. So our hair has a tendency for most people to be a little bit drier, a little bit harder to manage, kind of fly away. So with these hair conditions, we have 7 to 12 cuticle layers on the inside of our hair strand. Our scales should be laying flat. The acid mantle lubricates the outermost layer of the cuticle and reduces friction. But combing and brushing can cause cuticle damage, especially if your hair is wet and you're using a brush that's not made for wet hair. Okay, so that can cause damage also. Split ends, frizziness, breakage if your hair gets caught in the brushes. So you should always comb your hair with a wide tooth comb first. Okay, I'm going to stop with these hair conditions right here for now. And yeah, I'm going to stop here for now.